Eugenio, welcome to Stories in AI. How are you today?
Thank you for having me. Doing great.
No, it's a pleasure to have you here. Why don't you kick us off with who is Eugenio? What is your background? How did you get to where you are today?
Definitely. I'll do my best. But basically, I'm a data scientist. Right now, I'm focusing more on the management side of data science. So, managing a team of data scientists trying to do some cool artificial intelligence. And at the same time, also a bit of coding. That's pretty much where I started. So, definitely a technical level of expertise. And I've been working in AI and data science now for quite a few years. I've been focusing on a few different industries, but mostly on the healthcare side. First in the UK with the NHS, so the National Healthcare System in the UK, and now recently with CVS Health, and also at MIT, working still in the healthcare spectrum. And I've studied across MIT, Harvard, and Imperial College at the intersection pretty much of technology, business, and also like how we can use all of these technologies to try and make a positive impact in society and on all of us as people.
That is awesome. No, and you're being very modest about your background. You know, you're also a, Forbes 30 under 30. An AI leader for Fortune 100, a Fulbright scholar, and you also spoke. You've delivered several keynotes, and also a TEDx. And with that strong background, so thanks so much. It's such a pleasure to have you share the insights with the audience. So you mentioned cool things in AI, right? Let's start with that, right? What is cool in AI today, and what is cool, and we'll distill out saying what is just cool and not really of value, and what is cool and valuable, right? But what's cool in AI today?
Well, it's a great question. And I would say there's a lot of cool stuff in AI right now. And probably sometimes that's one of the big issues because there's so much that can be done that sometimes, it's more a matter of like, how can we stop for a second and try to better understand whether what we're doing is going to be actually useful and positive or if it's going to be hurtful. I would say what interests me the most and what I think is the coolest part right now is all of the social and economical impacts of AI. I've seen over the years a lot of different technologies, like NFTs, Web3, and so on, making a lot of changes. But one of the things I find the most interesting in AI is how it's already impacting some of the social components. I was speaking the other day of like, okay, if AI is going to be helping us gain some more free time, what's going to happen to us? What's going to happen to our work week? What's going to happen to us as a society? Are we going to start having more free time? Are we going to become a country, a nation of thinkers? And also, how is it going to change in terms of the economy? Are we going to have more productivity or more leisure time and so on? So I think all of these components are pretty cool, even more so than the technical components right now.
That is awesome. So, I mean, let's the big topic of the day of for the last 3 months, Chat GPT and generative AI. Uh, what Why are we seeing this, according to you, why are we seeing this explosion of interest in AI? Because you've been in data science, I've been in data science for decades now, and we've all seen like incremental changes and things and happening. I have a thesis on this, right? But I'd love to hear how you view the world, right? What changed that has now brought on this onslaught of engagement and developer interest and stuff like that with AI?
Yeah, I would say it's difficult to pin it down to only one single item. It's probably like the right moment and the right tool at the right time, so to say, in the sense that I feel now in terms of society, we started becoming a bit more aware of AI, what's possible, what's not possible. So also across the broader population, there is more awareness of what AI is and can do, even though it's still a bit of a buzzword, but we're all more aware of what is AI and what can do. And I feel like examples of ChatGPT or also stable diffusion and so on were probably started picking up so much because we're probably good tools that can provide some benefits on a day to day to all of us. And
Mm.
they also do not really require any technical expertise. You don't have to know about AI to use these tools. You can just use them. And that's usually, at least for me, the best way to have an effective tool. It's something that just works. It doesn't require me to know how to use it or how to play with it. And so in this case, you can have people that are completely out of the technology sector use ChatGPT to write articles or to create images. And at the same time, you can also have leaders that can use these tools. And when you have leaders, let's say that it becomes very interesting. It becomes very interesting for a company, for investing, and everything that's around there.
No, it's actually interesting, right? I mean, there's a few things that you said I want to pick apart, and one of my theses is also like you're exactly right, right? It's the human machine interaction paradigm has changed, right? So with ChatGPT and the ability to actually have a simple natural language interface to one of the state of the art, intelligence models or large language models in the back end to do things and perform tasks for you, it's pretty amazing, right? I mean, that whole API interface is now human language oriented, the prompting, right? So that was one. I think that unlocked the ability, the cost of creation. So imagine like 2 years ago, if somebody had to build a natural language processing model to do a custom entity extraction from a piece of text, they have to hire a data scientist, they have to hire an ML engineer, they have the data engineer who cleans up the data, you annotate the data, you actually train your models with it, you deploy it in production, you manage it, you test it, and then the business user gets to actually play with it, right? Today, they just go to chat.openai.com, sign up for a free account, exposes other issues, but we'll come to that. You put the data in, and you can just, hey, find out these named entities from this particular text. You get the answer, right? The cost of creation, and same thing with stable diffusion or stability, any of the other image generation, text to image models too. You don't need to hire a graphic designer and an artist to actually build a cartoon. You can just ask an intelligent model with the right prompting, with the right back and forth. You can now generate art that is at least as good or better than in some case human art, human generated art. I think the cost of creation just went to zero, right? I mean, it was like there was this cost of time and money and materials and stuff. That doesn't happen anymore. So, I mean, it's fascinating. But coming to the place both of us play in, healthcare, right? How does this apply to healthcare? I mean, or any regulated industry that is like literally saving lives, right? It's very, your cost of error is actually very high. How does this relate to, how does this revolution in generative AI and ChatGPT apply to healthcare? What is possible? What is not possible yet? And how do you see this shape up?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question because I think the healthcare industry is probably one of the best examples of the positive aspects that something like ChatGPT can bring, but also at the same time, all of the issues and challenges that we have to be not afraid of, but we for sure have to tackle them. And that means, ethical issues, bias issues, and everything like that. So one of the areas I find the most fascinating for ChatGPT and healthcare is the fact that talking about the domain, of the technical component, but doctors spend way too much time, entering information on the clinical systems, clinical records. You have to find the right ICD-10 codes, CPT codes, and so I find ChatGPT as one of the best ways for, let's say, a doctor to just say, okay, in a text, or even just maybe saying it one day, what's happening, what's the situation of a patient, how they're feeling, what did they find, and they just say, oh, this person has this disease with these characteristics, and then ChatGPT can automatically create the entries of the clinical records, can automatically pick the right ICD-10 codes, CPT, and maybe even just provide some recommendations one day. And so it's
Hmm.
literally what you said about how can we give an interface that's human-like to people that need human-like interfaces. And so we don't need, and this doesn't really help my case because I'm a data scientist, but we don't really have to have anymore, technical people that can write SQL queries to answer questions through the data. We can just literally ask ChatGPT, okay, what is the disease that is the most prevalent across the US, and it can automatically analyze data and provide this information. So I would say pretty much bridging this gap between what doctors would like to do, which is focusing on the patients, and what they have to do, which is spending way too much time on the technicalities.
That's awesome. No, I think it's a pretty fantastic. I mean, you laid out, touched upon a lot of things, and I want to go into that a little bit, right? One is definitely, I think this, as an industry, it's a lot more knowledge worker centric, right? But definitely the fact that there's value. Healthcare is more about care than health. I mean, right? If you really think about it, it's just be it, if you go to a physician. I mean, yes, at some point we'll all be comfortable just have a an intelligent AI autonomous agent that has passed all the medical exams, give us medical advice. We're not there yet. I don't think we're going to get there anytime soon, right? But it'll happen. It'll definitely happen at some point. On the other hand, I think most of the expectations of the customers, which is patients in this matter in healthcare, is more than just accurate answers and fast math and give me insights, right? There is a lot more deeper mission that people are on when they're in healthcare. So the opportunity, as you said, is yeah, I mean, if you can empower each of the healthcare worker with tools, so the cost of actually doing the business of care goes down, right? With intelligence system. Although cost, I have an issue there right now, because the cost to train an LLM and to maintain it and to do inferencing is actually pretty expensive today, right? It's not cheap, but it'll come down. And then second thing is around, I think I worry about, in the rush for technology and stuff, we have to really think about, we cannot forget the business of care, which is what we all exist for, which is the patient and the patient experience and patient outcomes, right? So there is an important scaffolding, or the guardrails you have to put in when you use these cutting edge technologies. You need a generative AI version of the Hippocratic Oath for healthcare if you're using generative AI, right? So I think there's some groups that I know are working on this, which is amazing. But it's interesting. So you named a few different use cases, right? So let's pick a few. I mean, give me a few more examples where you've seen in your network, in your community, your workplace, whatever, you're seeing an actual implementation that is working in healthcare. The use of either a chat GPT or even a homegrown LLM or models. And you mentioned one example of just, hey, I'll give you some notes, give me the CPT codes and ICD codes from this particular piece of text. So give me some examples that makes it real for the audience, right? Here's what people are doing right now.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what you were saying as well. So I am not a big believer in technology like ChatGPT or LLMs replacing doctors, rather to enhance them. I see these technologies, including AI, as stethoscopes, as MRI machines. So they're tools that provide more information for the doctor to take better decisions. Yep. So the key point is still the doctor. And I feel, thankfully, that a lot of companies, a lot of startups are still in the development phase, so nothing ready to be sold, ready to be productionized, but are in the process of going this direction of saying, okay, we can empower doctors with better tools to allocate their time in the right way. And so pretty much on what you were saying, we can give these tools to doctors in a way that they can, ask better questions to the data, have information. Maybe the LLM can be able to, look into all of the files across hospitals or across the world even one day, and then provide insights to the doctor on, okay, this happened in our case, this happened in our country, or to a similar patient. And then for the doctor to not have, of course, its role completely replaced by a machine, but rather to have all of these new data points that can then help the doctor take better decisions. And for instance, at MIT, we did put together an app that uses machine learning to provide doctors with insights on, okay, is this patient going to survive this type of surgery? And if so, with which probability, or is it better to do another type of procedure. And that is a great way, in my opinion, to go in this direction of technology should empower and enhance doctors' abilities and also in better roles. And LLMs are going to go in that direction. But then it's just a question of how can we do so with all of the ethical and bias components that we have in the data. And of
Yeah.
course, if we give very powerful tool to doctors like we are and probably soon, how can we make sure that we foster innovation, but at the same time we don't create issues, especially for patients?
Yeah, no, I think, so one, it's interesting, and I want to touch upon the patient experience side too. But you're absolutely right, right? There's the opportunity is to provide a Jarvis suit for the doctor to become Iron Man. They now have the access to any information and being able to reason across multiple pieces of information so they can focus on what matters most, which is taking care of their patients. Totally get that. On the patient experience side, though, right, we live in a world where, like, nursing shortages and healthcare, caregiver shortages is running. It's the top news everywhere, right? Also, on the other hand, care delivery systems like providers are, most often than not, are really margin compressed. They run a very low margin. It's a services business. It's really hard. Now, you put the two, and then on top of that, you actually take the example of a patient experience today. It's terrible, no matter where you are, right? Whichever part of the system. If you're signing up for you're looking for and trying to sign up for a clinical trial, it's terrible. That experience is terrible. You go to a clinical trial recruiting website, you answer 300 questions, click on 45 different radio buttons to select whether you're actually eligible. So you're reporting the data, on your own based on your memory, all of that stuff. And then you wait to hear back from nurses and people and call centers, and it's a terrible experience on that front. You take an example of somebody walking into a hospital system, the amount of intake forms you still have to sign over and over again every single time, paper forms, sign it and stuff, and somebody types it in. All that data doesn't come in. The nurse comes in, the first question, she asks you the same 20 questions, you answer it in the front door. You're having that issue, right? And then on top of that, you finish let's say a specialist appointment, and you talked about a lot of those things and a lot of different stuff. And unless there is clear instructions that the doctor or the physician is giving you as the patient saying you should follow these regimen, they'll print out a document and give it to them. But they lose complete context of that conversation. They have no idea. And especially in a world where patients want to know more, they want to actually understand the context of their condition, their disease, their options, all of that kind of stuff. It's not there. And the last example I'll give you is payers, or like the whole experience of trying to get to a place of care. Let's say you want to go do an MRI test, right, or a CT scan. You walk up to the diagnosis center, you sign up, and you ask the absolute easy question: how much it is going to cost for me? And 90% of the time, the diagnostic center cannot answer that question. It all depends on your plan. Your plan tells me that this is your thing. I don't know whether you've already met your deductible. So with the plan covers for diagnostic reasons, for it doesn't cover this thing. So it will be anywhere from $300 to $7,000 that's going to cost the CT scan for you or MRI. And it is just such a terrible experience. Is there an opportunity? And I see this like fundamentally, right? There's an opportunity where, like, these are all decisions or recommendations or insights or being able to interactively ask and get answers, dialogue of multiple pieces of information, most likely about the patient. That the patient themselves are asking questions about pools and pockets of data that exist about them in different systems. Is there something here that we can do to use this cutting edge, large language models and generative AI tools to change that experience in a way? And what are the risks and challenges of doing that, right? And I'm
Yeah,
brainstorming this because I've been thinking about it for some time now.
yeah, definitely. And that issue, the interoperability issue, so having multiple data systems, having a bit of your data, and imagine for me coming from different countries as well, there's data all over the world in different languages. So every single time it's a pain, and you have maybe vaccinations done in one country, some other details that are in another country. And it's extremely difficult. I would say definitely, algorithms like LLMs or ChatGPT and so on can help in making a better understanding, of all of this massive information. Say hospitals, but also basically every company has a huge amount of information, in Word documents in different formats, and usually that's unstructured information. And one of the biggest issues over the past few years was, okay, algorithms in machine learning, let's say, work really well with tabular structured information, but how can we make more insights, or can I create more insights and gather all this information from all of these different data sources, different locations? So I definitely see a future where this type of text algorithms can be the portal and the single point of entry for a patient, let's say, or for a doctor to ask all of these questions. And then the algorithm be able to pull all of the information, all of the text information from all of these different environments or hospitals or countries. The question though to me is how the algorithms and the technologies might be there, but we have to change the cultural component, and the beliefs we have on privacy and on data sharing to be able to tackle that. Because especially in the healthcare industry, you often have technologies available and ready to use, but it's the mindset and often it's also really needed and necessary to have trust issues, so to say, in sharing data. So that cultural component, I would say, is going to be the key, not the technology itself.
No, I agree. And, we're at Autonomize, the company that I'm CEO of. We have been thinking about these issues for a while. And, we live in golden times where the access to cutting edge research on technology, specifically in generative AI and LLMs and GPTs of the world, are now available, accessible for everybody. Yet, just like you talked about the unstructured data versus structured data, to contextualize this technology for healthcare requires work, right? And requires, how do you build trust with, when you're building systems for, for patient care, or automated, or making a process or a business process more intelligent within the healthcare system or payers or pharma. You have to really contextualize the use of these technologies to say, how do I bring in the right notion on privacy and security? How do I minimize harm by reducing the bias on the data? How do I do, if you're using a large language model to generate text, and do some retrieval augmentation on a smaller scope of text that you want to retrieve from, rather than, hallucinating from Twitter feeds, right? So there's all of these different, I would say, quasi technical, and some of them are actually business process kind of issues too, that you need to really, comprehend and stuff. But I think the future is so bright in the space. We're finally have all the tools, and I'm not saying all the tools, but a lot of tools in our disposal to really go back to the center, which is put the patients in the heart of the industry. Right now, it's three different. You have payers, you have providers, you have life sciences, you have caregivers, you have clinics and virtual care. Where's the patient? Everybody's talking about this patient, but they're completely missing from the equation, right? There is an opportunity to bring it back together. That's great. No, thank you for sharing your insights here, Eugenio. I want to take a little bit of pivot. So one of the things that's fascinating about your background is your career evolution. You went from being a data scientist, you're still a data scientist, to managing a team of data science, and progressing in this thing. What does that take, right? I mean, now the reason, I'll give you the context of my question. Data scientists have a really hard job. One is thinking through the problem, and then communicating that through code, or Python and libraries, and then passing it on, or actually doing the machine learning part of actually wrapping that into an API, delivering it, deploying it, managing it, the whole 9 yards. But they also have a very important job, which is like, it's today it's gotten a lot easier thanks to ChatGPT, but how explaining the value, or just communicating the value of what you're doing, because a lot of this value is in a lot of data science is storytelling as well, right? So, and then so you've lived that, you've done that and stuff, and then you evolved into a manager or a leadership role in here. What can others learn from your journey that you want to actually just give me some tips for other aspiring data scientists who wants to get into management and grow in their career?
Yeah. And it's a great question, because I would say, like, after all of these years, I basically realized, how all of the complex areas, of data science that are not really about code, are not really about algorithms. What are the initial parts that you have to tackle? But I tend to say to my team, like, the complex parts of data science are everything around data science. Are, how can you better interact with stakeholders? How can you communicate that effectively, as you said? And all of these things are the ones that sometimes make or break a project. There might be the best algorithm, there might be the best machine learning model, but if you're not able to do some of the, more people management or soft skills type of endeavors, then you're definitely not going to have success. And so I'd say one of the key focuses right now for me is how people are at the center of everything. And so if you work in the healthcare industry, you know that the patient's at the center and everything has to be around them, around their health, around their well-being. But at the same time, also within a company, I now have realized, how no project is about the data or about the technology, but it's about making sure that your client, your internal client, the stakeholders that work with you, do have a clear benefit from the product. So you understand the problem that they have, and there's the solution that you're putting together on the data science side actually answers their question. And so it's all about how can you better interact with them, understand their needs and pain points, translate them into an actual product, and then give it back to them. So it's pretty much all about people, stakeholder management, communicating effectively, and connecting the dots. So technology and data science, unfortunately or fortunately, is only a tool and a means to an end.
That's so true. Technology is just a tool; it's the means to the end. Don't forget the true end. Don't forget what you're trying to do. In fact, it's one of the things that worries me a little bit. Is like we're moving so fast, and there was all this moratorium on trying to pause for the next 6 months and stuff. I don't know whether that's going to really make a difference, but I understand their point. And one of the things that worries me is like, how we all like to chase S curves, right? I mean, you're trying to actually look at, hey, there's something new, let's actually go get it to the level of adoption. It's interesting, and in the market, any market for that matter, most of the value is really captured probably early on. A lot of value is captured early on, and then later on in the cycle with laggards and stuff. But then most of the value that is created for the market, for the end users, for the folks, is not in the early phase of the S curve. It is actually when you start seeing this translate to business outcomes and ROIs and adoption drives and things like that, right? So one of the things I worry about is like we just started this Cambrian evolution, and everybody is now trying to build the largest model with the most amount of parameters, or the fastest inferencing, and very soon the lowest cost of actually inferencing as well, maybe the approaches that everybody will take. And there's not enough. Hopefully this will open up the ecosystem for builders like you and I to actually go and take these right piece parts and build the recipes needed to go solve real problems and drive ROI. But one of the things I always worry about is like, when you're going so fast and stuff, there's all these nuggets, there's a lot of things that are getting generated, but you're not really waiting to translate that to value. You just jump on to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, right? Well, and I think, I'm not too worried about it in healthcare, to be honest, because most healthcare organizations are pretty slow to adopt. So, which is, it's unfortunate scenario, and rightly so, because they want to be more risk averse and, that kind of stuff. So that kind of concerns me a little bit. And, can you share anything that, organizations like CVS is doing in the space, or is that off the discussion today? I mean, you're not representing them officially; it's your opinion, but anything you can share.
Yeah, for sure. It's my opinion, but I can definitely say that, in general, what I've seen over the years is how most data scientists, especially the ones that are at the beginning of their career, do data science because they're fascinated, about the problem, about the technical complexity. So you often see, data scientists that just want to do data science. And that's, of course, the reason why they set up a job. But it's an art, and it's one of the probably most complex areas to try and take the problem and understand how to solve it, sometimes without ending up doing the things or the tools that you want to use. So I see very often, people want to do deep learning and LLMs, and they try to throw ChatGPT at everything. Whatever the
Yeah.
issue is, how can I do something that's stimulating for me? And that's
Interesting.
usually one of the pitfalls, right?
Yeah.
As we said before,
Yeah.
because that's not putting other people in front. It's putting yourself, it's putting the technology at the center. And so, as you said, most of the value is at the end, so towards the final 20%, so to say. And so you usually have most of the more junior folks getting into projects just because they're fascinated, about the technologies, the deep learning side, and they then end up having projects developed that don't really solve an issue, they don't really provide
Yeah.
benefits. And so those are the ones that tend to then die and be put on a shelf, and then they move on to the next one. And instead, it's usually more challenging to say, okay, I'm going to pick linear regression or logistic regression or something which is very simple. But I know that this will be deployed, implemented, understood, and this will translate into an actual product. So that is the most challenging part for me.
Interesting. That's, very well said. Very well said. It's like, how do you really, back to the earlier theme, how do you translate to value? And for translating to value and putting in production, you need to understand it. You need to, understand all the dimensions of it, the risk with it, and you need to make sure that it's adopted well. All like, there's a lot more steps than just going into an API and asking a question, getting the answer, right? And it makes total sense. I mean, that's a great thing. Are any of your data scientists, afraid that their jobs are gonna be irrelevant? With all the intelligent agents, and now with, like, things like tool formers and hugging GPT and stuff like that, that'll just do the model selection and stuff for you. What are your
It's a
thoughts on that?
It's a great question. So I would say everybody that works in data science is definitely aware of the potential and the potential of having a lot of their job changed by ChatGPT and all these tools. But I would say, and this is probably one of the areas where more industries should learn from. I think that they do have the technical ropes and the ability to understand that their job will never be completely taken away from them. It's more
Yeah.
about a new tool, and okay, we can use it to improve our work life, to improve the way we do things, and focus on the better things. And so something which is fascinating, which I see, is how people use it, and data science use it just to get rid of some of the components which are the most tedious ones, like doing the same bit of code that you always do with data cleaning, feature engineering, model
Yeah.
selection, and so on. So it takes care of all of the boring parts, all of the annoying parts, so that you can focus on the high level value. I can think of, what is the
Yeah.
architecture, what is the right thing to do here. And so I
Yeah.
would say maybe more industries that have no such technical expertise might benefit from understanding that, it will change the job for sure, but it will make it better.
No, it's fascinating. It's just like, it'll just make data science better again, right? I mean, just make sure that you, just like for the knowledge workers, it kind of gives the option to the data scientists to be more productive right now. So it's actually pretty cool. With that's great, Eugenio. I think that was an amazing close for that conversation. Where can the viewers and listeners get in touch with you? Where can they find you on the internet?
Definitely on social media, so on LinkedIn or Twitter as well.
Twitter as well. Very cool. Eugenio, thanks so much for taking the time today. This was such a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.